What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Hustle or Stay Basic podcast. I'm your host, KG, at KG the Hustler. As always, on this podcast, I'm talking with entrepreneurs, freelancers, and people chasing their dreams. And today I have someone who's chasing her dreams, and that's Bethany Downer, who is an entrepreneur and an aspiring space traveler. So thank you so much, Bethany, for being on this show.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, first things first, are you based out of Newfoundland?
I am, yeah. So COVID, as it did for most people, it really shook things up for me. I was traveling almost full time
Okay.
when COVID shut things down. So I was in Belgium at the time. But because of this, I was able to negotiate some, remote working contracts more long term, which was a positive outcome. So I came back home where I was born and raised in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'm now working here from home. Bought a house, adopted a cat, got a car. So I've been setting some roots here now. And when things open up again, I'm sure I'll travel, but this is the new home base.
I actually wanted to come down to Newfoundland in 2020. Like, I remember making plans with my wife in like late 2019, like, hey, let's go make an East Coast trip. I'm based out of Ontario. And of course that did not happen. But how is the whole COVID situation, everything in Newfoundland?
We were honestly very fortunate. Life was as normal as it could be, I guess. All through last summer, up through Christmas, we did great, but we did have a pretty significant outbreak of the UK variant there back in the beginning of February.
Yeah.
So we only now just started opening up again a couple of weeks ago, but the vaccine rollout has been going well. It's one of the things where if you're on an island, it was easy enough to cut things off. So they are pretty strict in terms of who can come back onto the island, which has been very effective. So I feel very fortunate to be where I'm from and that everyone is abiding by the guidelines as good as they can. Newfoundlanders are known to be friendly, so it's hard for us not to welcome as many people as we'd like to, but we look forward to the day when we can have people come visit again.
Yeah, and I look forward to actually making a trip down there. I mean, in Ontario, we've been kind of in this lockdown, unlockdown, lockdown, unlockdown mode.
Back and forth.
I kind of hope we just did a lockdown for 5 months and kind of got it over with, but seems like we're just kind of stuck in moving this lever back and forth. But I mean, enough about that. How I stumbled upon your account and your story was I was looking for people to get on this show, and I stumbled upon an article. It was like 30 under 30, dated in 2016. And I went through that list and I found a couple people, you being one of them. And one of the things that caught my interest was you founded a nonprofit called One Step. And I was hoping you might be able to touch up on that a bit, although it is quite a long time ago.
Yeah, but you know what? It's all relevant. I tell people when they ask me to my journey to, going to space, I say it's a lot like walking a dog. It's going in every which direction. It's not always upwards. You're going to have things that are what feels like totally irrelevant, but One Step was a huge part of my journey to getting to where I am now. So it's definitely it came full circle. So back when I was studying at Memorial University here in Newfoundland, I was struggling to find my major, knowing what I wanted to do. I felt the only way I could get into space was through engineering. After 2 weeks of engineering, I mean, it was doing good, but I wasn't passionate for it. I didn't really care.
Yeah.
Started doing some more general studies, and I was just trying to struggle a bit to find what really took my interest and passion. If I'm going to do something for the rest of my life, I at least want to care about it.
Exactly.
I ended up finding a connection with earth science and geography. But it was through that I found a sustainability conference that was taking place in Guelph, Ontario.
Okay.
The primary reason I applied to go was because Chris Hadfield was the keynote speaker.
Cool.
Not to say I didn't have interest in sustainability. It was a core value of mine, but of course I was very much interested in hearing him speak. I hadn't met him before. This was not too, he was still big and in the news, and it was much closer to when he was still involved in spaceflight. So I was fortunate to be able to go. I got a few minutes alone to chat with him, and I said to him, there's no one from Atlantic Canada who's been to space. It bothers me. I feel we're often disregarded. We don't have the same opportunities as those from Ontario, Quebec, the West Coast, where they have more direct access to industry, as well as education opportunities. I mean, I can't get an astronomy degree or aerospace engineering degree in Atlantic Canada. I had to travel. So I told him, I said, what can I do about it? There's got to be someone to do it first, or how can I improve things here? And it was his advice that not only set me on the path, but it started One Step too. He first started saying, just put my name out there, not only in terms of accountability, saying this is what you want to do, but become a leader in your own community as well, and just start doing it.
Okay.
It ended up working out. Through that conference, I got the idea for One Step. So many conversations were happening about ways in our own lives that we can be more sustainable. And something that really struck home to me that there wasn't really a solution for yet was just how many shoes people tend to own. The average in North America is about 19 pairs per person.
Really?
That was outstanding. You can only wear one at a time. So it asked me if females in particular tend to own a lot of different types of shoes. And I thought, okay, maybe that's one thing that I could start on first and being more sustainable. So I promised my parents while I was living with at the time, I told them my goal for the community is just to collect 100 from my peers and my network. I want to collect 100 shoes and give them back to an organization that could use them and repurpose them in some way.
Gotcha.
It took about an hour. I mean, people were looking to get rid of the shoes, put them to something good. And I thought, okay, I need to make this more concrete. So I made a nonprofit organization registered in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. People came out of the woodworks. Not only did they want to donate, did they want to be a partner, but there was also people that needed them. And that was something that was really striking to me, both the generosity from the people who wanted to help, but also the need that people had for them. It completely exploded. It got so big that it was only a matter of months that we had the provincial designation. I had to close that and open a federal nonprofit because there was so much interest from across the country. At one point there was 20,000 pairs of shoes in my family's home, and we were sorting and counting and weighing them, cleaning them. It was how I was spending my evenings, my weekends was shoes. And everyone knew I had a space interest, but I became known as Shoe Girl. I mean, that's now evolved to be Space Girl, but it was Shoe Girl at the time. I was lucky that there were so many different organizations that we partnered with, and we were able to find meaningful distribution networks to help them. There were different types of groups that were going to do humanitarian work overseas that were able to help us distribute them if we were able to give them some pairs. Airline companies were willing to help us out. It spanned from homeless shelters to women's shelters, giving a woman a pair of heels for their first job interview after coming out of a shelter. Or new Canadians, when they come to Canada, they're going to need winter boots. Maybe they want skates. They learn to skate and get the full new Canadian experience in their first winter. Things like this. We also partnered, for example, with the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto for any stillborn children. If they aren't able to bring their child home with them, there is a service in which they can get a cast of their child's foot. And we would help in that way. So we couldn't help with shoes, but we would help support financially with things like that. So it just came to be something so much bigger than that initial vision that I had. The distribution network ended up spanning 18 countries around the world, and it all started from St. John's and me starting from my home, but the collection just grew. So this became what I spent most of my time on. I wasn't in full-time studies. I was collecting shoes, and unfortunately I wasn't able to keep up as the president of the program because I went away to France for my master's studies. But instead, One Step became something that people adopted and use all the time. So there's still churches and schools here who use the One Step logo and keep it going. There were still organizations on the west coast of Canada that collect them for local shelters. So more as a vision that I decided to get people to keep going. And I encourage people to still use the name One Step because it still has a ring to it, but it's not something that's concretely organized or sustained anymore.
So with you being back home now, do you see that logo around, like you were saying, like you see it at churches and stuff like that? You see the One Step logo in use today?
It's more so people point out to me because sometimes I'm stopped now as the girl who goes to space, but they'll say, you started as Shoe Girl, or I still have my One Step logo on my phone, or I still found that at the at the school the other day where we're collecting it. So it is still around, which is really nice and special. What I wanted to stay around was the vision and the idea of giving back and thinking of those who are less fortunate than you. That's what I wanted to keep going, and to also consider anytime you buy something, you got to get rid of something else. I never buy a new pair of shoes anymore without donating one that I already have. So hopefully that mindset was something I was able to pass along as well, which was incredibly meaningful, that whole experience. I had no idea what it was going to lead me to, but that's what helped me become a leader. Time management, public speaking, these were things I now rely on every day. I had no idea of what I was building then at the time, but it came to be quite useful and applicable to things that would come thereafter. And it was a large reason I was accepted to the master's program that I was, because they wanted, signs of character, not only your transcript, right? So it's amazing still in job interviews, One Step comes up and I need 30 minutes of their time almost to explain what it was.
No, it must feel so fulfilling. And empowering that you made such an impact in your community, and actually took the advice of Chris Hadfield and actually made a name for yourself. So that's awesome. That's a great story. I mean, I'll post the links for One Step in the bio for this podcast episode, or in the YouTube channel as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. I mean, you said you pursued your master's after that. What did you pursue your master's in?
The title was Master of Space Studies. So
Cool.
for example, 9 a.m. I do space medicine. Maybe at 10, I'd be doing astrophysics or astronomy. The afternoon, I was learning about space economics. So if you can imagine any broad range of topic of study, you can also apply that to space. And I really try to remind people that space encompasses everything. It's a very broad and umbrella term. So we need everything from space lawyers to scientists, engineers, you name it. Any word, if you put space before it or after it, it applies. I do this with kids all the time. I ask them to name a job, and I promise them I can find a space connection. So this was a great way for me to go from someone who knew very little about space, other than what I decided to try to learn in my own time. And I'd done a lot of earth science, so I'd learned a lot about the earth, but then I wanted to take that off world and focus on space. So that allowed me to not only tap into my space interest, but find what within the space domain was what I wanted to do.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that there's so many different careers in the space industry. Like when I think of space, I just think of astronaut. Like that's just
of course, it's either rocket scientist or astronaut. And that's my job now every day as a public communicator for space, is to bridge that gap between the engineers and scientists and the public. And a big thing for me is trying to communicate that we need jobs of all kinds. We need everyone. We need the best of the best to help us get further into space and to answer these big questions, push innovation feats, and that covers all disciplines.
So this might be a tough question, but say I was an economics major, and you said there's space economics, right? Where would I even go to look for such opportunities, or even to pursue that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that people are challenged by if they want to just start and go at it. So something I tell everyone is, if you want to do something in space, learn how to do it on Earth first. If you want to fly rockets, become a pilot, then you transition to it. If you want to be a space doctor, you learn to be a doctor first, and then you can apply it to space. Same for space lawyers. They got their they were legally certified first, and then they moved into space law. So those who do economics first, they learn the principles about the economics that we use here on Earth, and then they do more specialized disciplines. And there are universities that feature those programs. And people who are still interested and want to tap into that interest, for example, here in Canada, I encourage SEDS, which is for students, to give them an opportunity to look into different possibilities of research, as well as experiences. The Space Generation Advisory Council is a great means of connecting to other young individuals. It's exclusively for those who are 35 and under. Young professionals and students. It's a division of the United Nations program on space applications. So it's a great way to attend networking events around the world, including in your own region. There are 2 designated points of contact for Canada and every other country. So you can find these different networks of students and communicate with them if you have shared experiences, interests, and see what path you might want to take. Because part of it that was scary to me is jumping into something and I didn't even know if I would like it. And I had to find what within the huge space umbrella was of interest to me.
Yeah, you mentioned it fairly quickly. You said SEDS?
SEDS, yeah, that's right. That's one that people often use, Students for Exploration. I have to get you the full acronym.
No worries. If you could ping me that after, I would love to include that in the description of this episode. I think that would be super helpful for others as well.
Yeah, so I was right. It's the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. So there's different divisions. There's one here in Canada. SEDS Canada, it's just seds.ca. There's also one in the UK and the US. So there's different branches. Gotcha. And I encourage you to start within your own region. Find out what Canada's doing in space. Anyone that's interested in space, I say one of the most important things to start with is start educating yourself. What's happening, not only in your own country, but around the world. We're often inundated with news from NASA, but there's big things that are taking place in Europe and India, Russia, China. Educate yourself about what's happening. Follow the news, get excited about it. That's the important means of getting caught up, because there's so much happening, and that can help fuel your excitement too.
That's great advice. And yeah, like I mean, I think I've been focusing so much in finance and in my day-to-day world that, space is to me just NASA, like you said, rocket science,
Right.
astronauts. So that's really cool that there's all these other opportunities out there. And I'm sure our
Absolutely.
listeners would love that as well.
Absolutely. We need everyone involved in space. We need the best, the brightest, and those from diverse backgrounds. I mean, if you think about it, we're now pushing the boundaries of what's possible. We're soon going to walk on the moon again. Within our
Hmm.
lifetimes, we'll see the first human on Mars. And if we're pushing ourselves and pushing humanity further and building these communities of people that are off world, we really want to bring the best of what we have here, but also the most diverse. That means we need the most diverse experiences and skill sets and backgrounds. We don't need we need people that look like everyone to be able to reflect us, and if they're representing all of us and they're going off, they should look like all of us,
Yeah.
have different experiences. So that's what's really important. I encourage anyone who has an interest in space to really go for it.
Cool. I think I just saw a blurb about Biden passing a bill for NASA earlier this morning, and there was a part about it for a mission to get, I guess, U.S. astronauts back on the moon.
And that will include a Canadian too. One of the first Artemis missions will include a Canadian. Canada has very close ties, of course, with NASA, and we have a big role with our space robotics. If you look on our $5 bill, you see the Canada arm. They're
Yep.
currently building the next version of the Canada arm, which will be on our next space station, which will be in orbit around the moon. So Canada's heavily involved. I mean, we're leading in terms of space medicine and space robotics, but we need all disciplines, and we're right at the forefront and leading that charge.
Okay. I mean, everything you're saying, it sounds so exciting, and like,
That's
I
my
mean,
goal is when I'm talking, I'm not trying to sell it to you. I hope my excitement and love for space just comes through.
yeah, no, like, I think I think more Canadians should be more aware of this. And I'm hoping my podcast can help with that. I also saw in your bio, it says European Space Agency, like you're working with them or for them.
That's
Could you talk a
right.
little bit about
So
that?
coming from my master's study, that's when I then transitioned into my young professional career. As I mentioned, that master's program was great for me to dip my toes into many different areas of space and find out what my connection was. And both a surprise and not a surprise to me, the connection that I built was to outreach and communications for space. I
Okay.
hated people using the term rocket science as a means of something that's too hard, too challenging, not accessible. And sometimes it's just a mean of communicating it the right way. So sometimes I joke that my job is translating English to English just for different
Okay.
audiences. So I bridge that gap between the scientists as well as the engineers and to bring their science and technology to the public. So whether it's
Hmm.
finding better ways to communicate it to kids or to develop infographics, documentaries, I work in the domains of communications for space. So it challenges me to
Cool.
not only be up to date about everything that's happening, but to also understand it enough that I can translate it, whether for a group of investors or children, the general public, you name it. So as part of that master's program, I had an internship at the European Space Agency in the United Kingdom. And a large part of
Okay.
my role was working a bit with UK astronaut Tim Peake, who was much like the Chris Hadfield for the United Kingdom. And by going
Okay.
to different events with him around the summer, I learned a lot of things that I take with me now every day. But that's where I developed my love for communications. And I said, I want to be involved in the public side of things. Talking with someone who's not involved with space, like you, for example, and
Yeah.
seeing that light up in their face and realizing just how cool space can be, that's totally worth it to me. There's no price tag on that. And just enlightening someone or teaching them about space or making them get it, explaining what takes place inside a rocket engine. It's not complicated. You just need to find a means of understanding it that works for
Mm.
you, and that's my job. So I worked
It's
for a variety of different organizations over the years, but now my full-time job has come back to the European Space Agency, and I spend most of my time with the Hubble Space Telescope. And that's one that is known to most people.
mhm.
Beautiful images of space. In 2020, it celebrated its 30th anniversary, which is
Oh wow.
crazy. It's been now 3 decades that Hubble has been up
Yeah.
there. It has changed our understanding not only of how beautiful the universe is and all its famous imagery that it's taken, but from an astronomy and science standpoint, it has completely changed what we know and understand. So to be involved in such an impactful and well-known mission is a sincere pleasure. So I'm in charge of the content at ESA, so esahubble.org. You can also
Okay.
use spacetelescope.org. So I have the pleasure of coordinating the outreach team for ESA Hubble. And most recently, I've also been working with a brand new company that's just been announced called Star Harbor Space Academy. They will
Okay.
be the first publicly accessible spaceflight training facility. So anyone can go there and experience means of what it's like to go to space. Um,
Cool.
and you can check that out at starharbor.com, and there's more taking place with that. But I have many different little roles as in communications and the public side of space, which is really special. And it's through that I started my path of going to space. And like you said, most people, when they think of an astronaut, you might only think, oh, it's got to be a NASA astronaut, or you have to
Yeah.
go with a government agency. And I have the pleasure and honor, honestly, of being part of this new shift that we're experiencing in how you define the term astronaut. It's changing.
Okay.
How you can go to space and the different means of going to space is changing. There are so many new commercial companies. You know, the one that most people think of first is SpaceX, but they're not the only one.
Yeah.
There are many new companies that are offering other means of going to space. And I was able to start my training efforts because I'm a communicator. They don't
Mm.
just want people who are pilots or engineers anymore. They also want people that can share the experience of what it's like. And that's why I've been taken on board as part of that. So
Cool.
there's a lot more that I wish I could share about it, but that's part of the challenge with space stuff is you got to keep your mouth quiet about a lot of things, which is which is hard for someone like me. But I am hoping to have my first suborbital space flight within the next 5 years. If everything goes well, could be a little more after that, but I'm confident that it'll definitely take place within the next decade.
That's awesome. I mean, that was my next question. How do you go from cycom to space travel?
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had the pleasure of training with doctors, pilots, engineers, other communicators like me, others who are teachers. You know, they're really doing a great job, these different programs of bringing together people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and means of bringing those experiences to broader audiences. So not only do I want to communicate what the whole training experience has been like, but also what the space flight itself will be like, and hopefully having an impact thereafter. I've taken a lot of time and doing a lot of outreach work for students here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to take that more to Atlantic Canada as well. And it's through this
Yeah.
type of work that I feel I can really give back. And there's a shared experience that those who have been to space can share in terms of what it's like to look at the Earth from that perspective. And hopefully that feeling that I will have and the impact that will have on me is something that I can give back once I'm back and working again.
This might be a pretty easy question for you, but since when did you know you wanted to go to space?
I think that's honestly the question I get most. Or they ask my parents and they ask if I always had interest.
Yeah.
I think I can never identify a time in which it wasn't an interest.
Hmm.
It was more so for me recognizing that that interest was so strong and it wasn't going away. I think, you know, people have some cliche careers that they'll name when they're
Yeah.
kids. And I
Yeah.
think some people thought that that would just go away for me, but it only got worse. I only wanted to be involved in space more and more. I witnessed a space shuttle launch when I was on a family trip in Florida in 2007. And I
Mm.
thought there is nothing cooler than watching this launch. I need to get involved in space somehow. I felt really challenged and discouraged, honestly, because I didn't know how to do it. From an island out in the Atlantic, I didn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't any space agencies working here, but I had to find my own means of doing it, and now I'm working and developing ways to bring space to Newfoundland and Atlantic Canada as well. So those are works in progress, but it was honestly just always there. I remember going through school and the top of the notebook, I would always write what from each day was interesting to me or what things did I take away from each day that actually captured my attention. At the
Hmm.
end of the year, I would look back and think all those things that really captured my attention most could be brought back to space or, physics, science in some way, but there's a space connection. And space also connects everything else. We've talked about it here, today that space involves all disciplines. And I think that makes it
Yeah.
special. So the fact that I can have a hand in learning about medicine, economics, and robotics all within the span of a few minutes is quite special, and it challenges me and it's fun. But there's nothing quite like it. I don't know many other industries that can not only inspire you but excite you. It pushes what's possible. Space is asking the biggest questions, and it's pushing us further, unlike anything else. So honestly, the love has always been there. I just needed to acknowledge it and decide to go for it.
I I think what's so cool about your story is a lot of people would have thought that, hey, I want to go into space. This is something I'm super passionate about, and then tried engineering, and then been like, oh well, I guess space is not for me. I'm not an engineer, and then gone and changed your whole career and done something else. What's a great trait for you is you're super persistent, determined to get to space one way or another.
It was gonna happen, but to be honest, it's only been the past little while that I realized just how close it is to happening, how real it is to happening. And I'm excited to be able to share more of that as it happens over the next few years. But there were many times I didn't think it was going to happen. And so did many people. People on social media are happy to be negative, and to shoot you down from behind a screen.
Yep.
I had people come for me saying that it's unrealistic. Oh, she's not a NASA astronaut, so it's not real. Or this, I've faced so many setbacks making me think it's not going to happen. But it was one of those things. I said, I'm going to make it happen regardless. I don't know what it's going to look like yet. And that path to how it happens has been much like walking a dog. There's been ups, there's been downs. It's not a straightforward path, but I just had to find what my own path was. And I think it'll be different for everybody. And it's an exciting time because there are doors opening. There are more opportunities to go to space that are opening every year. So hopefully in a few decades time, anyone that wants to go can. I'm just excited to be part of the guinea pig crew of people that are testing it out as it first emerges. So I hope anyone that can, wants to, will be able to someday.
I think if I look back at all the guests I've had, and I think this is like episode 28 or something like that, not one person has had a very linear story. Like, this is what I wanted to do, and I did it, and here I am on the show. And
no
I think I think I'm learning quite a lot from it. Is you got to be able to pivot, and you got to be determined in what your goal is. And I see that in you 100%. I think it's super exciting.
Exactly. The one thing that stays consistent is the goal, but I think people should be open to that changing too. I used to think the only way I could go to space was to become a Canadian or NASA astronaut through, a government agency. And I learned as I got older that wasn't for me for a variety of reasons. But it's a matter of, the goal can change, it can adapt, but I think what's most important is that you're pushing for something, whatever it is, because having that goal for me has influenced everything, in terms of how hard I work, and everything that I do every day is around that goal. But it's allowed me to have the great life that I do have now. So I credit that ambition towards, getting that goal and everything that's come from it.
Yeah, I just read a book. I think it was called Be Unstoppable, and I think the first chapter is your why has to be so strong that you just stick to it. And it sounds like your why was incredibly
right. It's
strong.
not even ambition or motivation. It's the why,
Yeah.
To me, it was this, and everything else comes behind it. And a lot of people ask me, will you feel a sense of emptiness after you actually go to space? I said, no, that's when the impact starts. That's when I get to give back and encourage and help other people to do the same thing. I think it'll be a sense of relief almost once it actually happens, to all the people who said it's not going to happen. It's not for me to say. Hopefully the actual flight itself will speak for itself, but it's more so about pushing on to whatever's next and constantly creating new goals. I think that's the problem with having one huge one, is that everything's set on that. So I like to set up little ones all the time, which propels me forward, and it's all connected to a common why.
That is awesome. I'm gonna wrap it up here, but usually before I wrap it up, I like to ask, like, you dropped a lot of gems in this one, but is there any advice you'd have for anyone listening, whether they are an entrepreneur or they want to become an entrepreneur or they want to follow their goals or their passion? What kind of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I guess something different than the things I might have previously. One big thing I'm an advocate of is mentorship. Even if you don't have a direct relationship with this person, find someone that's doing something that you want to do. They don't have to have the full life career that you want, but there's something about them that draws you to them, and you're aspiring to have that common trait, or they've had a common experience to you. I think part of this whole network of entrepreneurs and people that are striving to do new things, it's easy to feel isolated and that you're alone. So to be able to connect with others that are doing the same thing. I mean, people ask me, who my mentors are. I have mentors that are my friends, that are my colleagues. There are also some that are astronauts, others that are heads of agencies. I grab something different from each of those people in different ways. and I try to take something from them. And I also encourage people, as they progress from young professional and to a little bit older, become a mentor yourself. That's the best way to pass along what you've learned and to make the best of those that are coming in behind you. And knowledge transfer and management is something that I really try to focus on, and to be able to pass on to those. So mentorship goes both ways, for you getting it, and then for providing it to others as well, and trying to find those that inspire you and push you forward and to be the best of yourself, but also to challenge yourself. I look for mentors that are going to check me, that are going to correct me, that are going to challenge me. I don't want someone that's going to tell me good job all the time. I want people to push me to be better. But look for mentorship in all ways. It could be your mother, your grandmother, your friend. It could be your boss. Try to take something from all of these people, because they all have means of pushing you and also teaching you something.
I think that's great advice, and advice I think I actually need to apply to my own life with my podcast and my YouTube channel and everything that I do on the side. You are right. Like when you are on a goal on your own, it can get lonely, it can get discouraging, and you have to rely on your own why or your willpower to continue. And I have continued so far, but I think mentorship is a great idea. So I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's something easy that anyone can do, right? Sometimes, advice that we pass on, I want it to be something that I could also do too. I want it to be easy, tangible advice that someone could take with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Bethany. I appreciate everything you've shared. I'll drop your Instagram link and stuff in the bio of this podcast. I hope you guys check out her profile. I hope you give her a follow and, follow along with her story as she goes to space within this decade. I think that's such a cool thing to say and do. And I know for sure you're making the East Coast proud.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. It's a pleasure to always speak to others who are doing their own thing. And I think young professionals of this age are more ambitious than ever. So I'm always excited to chat with others who share that same vision as well. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bethany. And thanks so much for listening, guys. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.